Good afternoon. Welcome back to Passion World Talk Radio Network, a wholly owned subsidiary of Global Media Network LLC. Educate, enlighten, entertain, and let's not forget mindfulness. On today's episode of Lest We Forget Historical with Lillian Caldwell, we're going to talk about an article that was written in The Conversation by Eric Strigorda from the Athabasca University. And the title of his article is Stuck in the Past. Current administration tariffs and other policies are dragging the U.S. back to the 19th century. So, what happened in the 19th century that's so bad? Well, Eric goes on to explain that during the current administration's first term as president, that the United States lurched from the absurdity of lies he told while he was in office for personal financial gain, his insults, and his utter contempt for critics. His term then ended with the irresponsible and dangerous incitement of the assault on the Capitol building on January 6, 2021. This time around, Eric notes that the current administration is relying on outdated tools, tariffs, small government, territorial expansion, and nationalism, not to mention going back to feudalism, to solve modern problems of the 21st century involving globalization, wealth disparity, the decline of manufacturing jobs, and exploitative capitalism, which means they get richer and we get poorer, and there is no more middle class. On April 2nd, the current administration announced a baseline tariff of 10% on all imports that aren't compliant with the Canadian United States Mexico agreement. Canada had also been hit with a 25% levy on Canadian made automobiles. The current administration's current use of 19th century tools that solve 21st century problems are wholly inappropriate for the 21st century and threatens to take us, the United States of America, back to the 19th century. This is a dangerous road for us to take. In the 19th century, it was marked by the rise of the nation-state, a single political entity united by geography, culture, and language. In many respects, the result of the rapidly industrialization world shifted away from monarchy rule and mercantile economics toward limited democratic rule and free market capitalization. It was a time of tariffs, small government, territorial expansion, and nationalism. Hint, make America great again. It was also a time of mass migration from Europe to North America, where rampant nativism, colonialism, and unchecked and exploitative capitalism shaped the landscape. Opinion? Musk? Sounds like Musk. Sounds like Musk to me. The prevailing belief at the time was that a nation state should use tariffs, adopt isolation policies to cut off the outside world, and seize territory where possible. Canada and Greenland, and possibly, potentially, the Panama Canal. These measures, it was thought, would foster national unity and allow capitalism to thrive by letting the invisible hand of the marketplace to work its magic. Protective tariffs promised to grow domestic industry, but the economic benefits were not evenly distributed. Wealth disparities grew wider as millions of immigrants arrived on North American shores, only to find deplorable living conditions in the cities and hardscrabble farmland out in the country. And we're doing the opposite. We're getting rid of all of immigrants. And who's going to take their place? Yeah, just relax those child laws. Come on, we'll put the children to work. I mean, children are considered property anyway until they're 26. Yeah, let's go do that instead. Many of the 20th century's problems flowed from these 19th century trends. Following the financial panic of 1873 and its ensuing economic depression in both Europe and North America, nation states unleashed tariffs to protect their domestic economics. It was the wrong strategy to pursue, as it slowed trade even more by limiting the free flow of goods and capital. Money, as is now well known, needs to move to grow. Working families chafed at the lack of labor protections like bargaining rights, health and safety measures, unemployment insurance, and sick benefits. Gee, it sounds like everything that the current administration is getting rid of now. In response, they formed unions and initiated waves of strikes throughout the Western industrialized world. And that's exactly what the current administration is trying to get away with and get rid of them as well. Western North America farmers were furious that tariffs forced them to buy on protective markets while selling on unprotected ones subject to international market prices. While the farmers in this country are very upset with the current administration between the lack of water and also other problems because they cannot compete with what's going on overseas. And the tariffs are stripping them of any power that they could have. The farmers are begging for help because they don't have what they need in order to grow the food in our marvelous food basket area because it no longer exists. There's no groundwater anymore to irrigate into the fields to grow the crops that the children laborers will pick. Just reminding you what's going on. Nation states warmed by rising nationalist fires form military defense alliances across Europe and its colonial and former colonial holdings, including Canada. In 1914, these alliances led to the First World War, a global and industrial war, the likes of which the world had never seen before, which ushered in the Great Depression in the 1930s. Unrestricted and largely unregulated capitalism, which is what the current administration is trying to get rid of now with all the deregulations that are going on. We'll be lucky if we have a planet in which we can live in safely in another 3 years. And the Great Depressions lasted a decade, which for those who don't understand math is 10 years. Many governments' initial response was to impose tariffs once again, and just as in 1873, they only made the problem worse. The rise of fascism, which was largely nationalism run amok, brought the world to war again at the end of the decade to devastating consequences. The post-war years saw a concerted international effort at using the nation state to regulate domestic economies by investing in social services and programs and to rein in runaway capital when its excesses threaten stability. International bodies like the World Bank, the United Nations, and the International Court of Justice were created to promote peace and stability. This new approach wasn't always successful, but so far the world hasn't seen any global hot wars or massive economic depressions. Not yet. That's where mindfulness comes in. In 1992, historian Francis Fukuyama, that's Fukuyama, infamously declared that the world had reached, quote, the end of history, unquote. He didn't mean that time stopped, Of course. Instead, he argued that the liberal nation state represented, quote, the endpoint of mankind's ideological evolution, and the democracy and the universalization of Western liberal democracy as the final form of human government, end of quote. In his view, the Western industrialized world had reached the pinnacle of successful governments and unlimited prosperity. Well, guess he was wrong. Yet, even as Western liberal democracy was congratulating itself on its own success, these same nation states, in conjunction with large corporations, were seeking out lower labor costs and greater profit in the developing world. That's why we sent everything overseas, folks. The result was a hollowing out of North America's industrial heartland, along with rampant exploitation of vulnerable labor in places like Asia, South Asia, and South Central America. Once mighty American cities declined, wages failed to keep up with inflation, and farm debt soared. And this is where the current administration re enters our story, tapping into the frustration. Excuse me, we're having technical difficulties. So hang on, continue. And this is where the current administration re enters the story, tapping into the frustration and disillusionment of frustrated Americans by promising to restore, quote, a golden age that never happened. Despite his promises, the current administration tariffs are unlikely to bring manufacturing jobs back to the U.S. As history has shown, tariffs do not revive industries that are already gone. Instead, they will only make Americans pay more for the things they need. A return to small government won't make America great again either. Instead, it risks repeating the 19th century pattern of making the rich richer and gutting the very social programs millions of people rely on. The current administration's massive and ongoing cuts to Social Security Administration are underway, and they're already eyeing Medicaid,